All right, good morning, to you all. Wasn't Pallavi's presentation really cool from Bhutan? Yeah? I thought that was epic. Five things to watch about eIDAS. Firstly, who's Jen? Jen is the crazed offspring of the merger of Avast and Norton, which happened just over a year ago now. So it's the world's biggest cybersecurity firm. And I came in through the acquisition by Avast of a company called Evanim, which did all sorts of things in the self-sovereign identity world, as some of you know. So that's who we are and what we're doing. And I look after our European operations. I look after our eIDAS activities and a bunch of other identity things. So what is eIDAS? It is the world's biggest digital wallet project that is happening at the moment to cover all of Europe. Stands for Electronic Identity Authentication and Signing. And it's eIDAS 2 because there's already an eIDAS out there. And eIDAS 2 is designed to fix a lot of the problems with eIDAS 1, which hasn't been a rip-roaring success. It's basically been a login to a government service with some third-party provider kind of thing. And from a user experience perspective, it's not great and it's not had a huge uptake. So eIDAS 2 is all about putting digital wallets in European citizens' hands, putting credentials in them so they can go and use them. And it's essentially not an SSI maximalist approach. It's not as extreme on the edge as I think the Bhutan model is, which is, I would say, pure SSI and all the better for it. There's a mixture. There's a lot more regulation involved in it. So yeah, it's huge. Basically, every European citizen will be able to get an eIDAS government certified wallet and put credentials in it and go and use it. You notice, by the way, I've got bored with PowerPoint these days, so maybe a slightly different presentation for you. So it came into effect this week, I think, 20th of May, and 73 pages, 25,000 words. I'm not sure how long the Bhutan National Digital Identity Act is. I imagine it's quite a lot shorter than that. But in the time it took the legislation to be written, the team in Bhutan got started, executed 8 pilots, 9 pilots, launched and have rolled out to 15% of the population. However, there is, I think, how many million people did I say? 500 million people, so it's a bit bigger. So hopefully the time scale won't be exactly correlating with the number of people there. So if you want to read it, it's there. It is actually quite a good read, the regulation. I wouldn't normally say that, but it's actually quite good. So it's worth having a look because it has a lot of really good principles in it. And for those of you who do read it, it's worth looking at how those principles could be implemented and whether the technology being proposed is going to satisfy what the legislation requires. Timescales now, 24 months for countries, the 27 member states, to provide certified wallets to their citizens. Okay, so it's not long, 24 months. Things have started already. Things are already in train, as you'll see in a minute. But in 24 months' time, member states have to say, here's your wallet, or wallets, go download them. Those wallets have to be certified as conformant, and more on that in a minute. There are 36 months for companies to start using this. Now, there's quite an interesting carrot and stick here. The stick is large organizations, and there's telcos in the room and online watching this. Banks, utility companies will have to, by law, accept people who present their identity with an eIDAS certified wallet. Okay, so there will have to be compliance from that perspective. But also the carrot is massive optimization and improvement of business processes, stripping out loads of costs, and all of the other great things you get with verifiable credentials. So there's a real carrot and stick here. What's happening now? We've got 4 large-scale pilots on the go, and Annette is going to talk about one of them, which is EWC, the European Digital Identity Wallet Consortium. So full disclosure, I set that up with the Swedish government, and there's a whole host of government and private sector members in that at the moment. And the primary use cases there are travel, payments, and organisational identity. And there's three others. There's potential, there's DC for EU, and there's no bid. And you can see what they're focused on there if I actually get out of the way. So these pilots are 50% funded by the European Commission, which means a company like us, we say, well, we'll do this amount of work in the pilot and it'll cost €1 million, and the European Commission gives us 500,000, and we foot the rest of the bill ourselves. So we've got the likes of Visa, Amadeus, a huge travel organisation in EWC consortium, and there's other organisations that are spanning multiple of these, but every consortium must have more than 3 governments as part of it. Okay, so this is big stuff going on, lots of funding, more to come, because there is another call. If you want to set up a consortium, there is a call on the go now for another 1 or 2 consortia to be set up. Okay, and these organisations, these consortia, are going to pilot these digital wallets and get real learnings and information back from those pilots, feed it back into the European Commission. And that's happening already. EWC is already in phase 1 of its piloting, 3-phase pilot approach. So we said 5 things to watch. So here's number 1, the legislation. So the legislation has been passed, but that's only part of it. Each country now has to pass their own implementing acts. So that's to come. Now, there's going to be an interesting issue with this, because each country has to pass their own implementing act and their own interpretation of how they're going to do this. And that could lead to quite a lot of diversification, which is, I think, one of the biggest problems that's likely to happen. Each country has to put in their own certification approach, how they're going to certify whether these digital wallets are doing what they're going to be, or meant to be doing properly. And they should all be interoperable, obviously, but therein lies, the devil lies in the detail. So there's a lot more legislation to come. Huge amounts of it. Huge amounts of already done and huge amounts still to come now for each European country. Thing to watch number 2, so the tech. The tech is already pretty complex. The wallet that's proposed, there's a thing called the Architecture Reference Framework, and that lists out what protocols are going to be used and how they're going to work and so on. And this wallet is going to support 2 protocols. So unlike the Bhutan NDI project, where they have 1 protocol, which I think is still Anon Creds, right? Which has full zero-knowledge proofs and selective disclosure and all that other beautiful stuff. The tech here is MDL, so Mobile Driving License Spec, ISO 18013-5 and -7 coming. God knows why I know that. And the second one is W3C Verifiable Credentials, SD-JOTS. Correct me if I'm wrong in any of that. So 2 protocols, so 1 wallet supporting 2 protocols. The MDL one is good because of it can be used offline and is fairly well proven, but online use is not very good, and there's issues around correlation and tracking of users that are trying to be resolved. And the W3C VC one is more usable online, remote, and more flexible in several ways. However, trying to build a wallet with 2 of those, it's hard enough to build a wallet with 1 of them. We spent years doing it at Evenim, and it's really difficult. To build it with 2 is even harder, and there's new protocols coming along all the time as well. So keep an eye on the tech. Wallet developers are having a tough time with it. User experience is the next one. So I think that there should be more time spent on user experience than on all the legislation across all of Europe put together and all the work being done on the tech. There's no real user experience guidelines at the moment for what should a user see. Now, if you think of eIDAS as designed to protect the sovereignty of European citizens' identity, so it's not being, your identity as a European citizen is not owned and run by a US tech company, then you've got to think, well, how much effort would a US tech company be putting into the UI of their digital wallet? And you think of Apple and Steve Jobs, you know, the icons on the iPhone have got to be good enough to eat, right? There's nothing like that happening at the moment. So this is a bit of a hole right now. What you don't really want is 27 member countries, maybe with 2 or 3 wallets each, all with different user experiences that aren't consistent and are puzzling for people and are not state of the art. What you really want is the most amazing user experience that is better than Apple or Google. That should be the bar, right? So there's a lot of work to do on that, and having maybe 20, 30, 40 different wallet providers doing things differently without a consistent user language is going to make things really, really tricky. So number 4, another big one to watch out for, the economic model. There's too many organizations that are waiting to see what is going to happen. We are one of them, okay? We're in this consortium to figure out what is going on. And I would say that all the other organizations, the private sector organizations in all the other consortia are also in there to see what is going on and to be close to the middle of it and try and understand it. Because the economic model is not yet clear. So everyone is waiting to see, right? So as well as the amount of time spent on the user experience, we need a similar amount of time spent on the economic model. So what's in it for us? We have no idea, right? No idea. Wallets are free to people, okay? Organizations, are they going to pay to receive this stuff? Are they going to pay us, or are they going to pay some wallet provider or some other platform developer, or you know, how is it going to work? Who pays for a revocation service or a trust registry? Who's paying for the wallet certification? We don't yet know. There is work happening right now at the European Commission. They've got Deloitte in working on some economic models and business models, and a number of the pilots are also looking at it as well, but it's unclear, and that needs to be sorted out really pretty quickly, because it's 2 years to go, and it's moving really fast. It probably takes 2 years to onboard a supplier at some companies. The next one, number 5, the big sell. Nobody knows about this, right? If you go and speak to an average person in Prague about eIDAS, they're like, you know, are you crazy or something? So it's not just people, it's organizations. There's some organizations in these consortia that know what's going on, but by and large, most organizations don't have a clue, even though they're going to be required by regulation to support and accept eIDAS credentials. So there's going to need to be a really big communication initiative, and that communication initiative is going to need to be different in every country. We've got an inkling about this at the moment. So in our EWC large-scale pilot, Jen is running the end-user pilot activities, right? Not the tech, but we're running the, you know, user recruitment and the surveys and all that kind of thing. And we're into the first phase of 3 phases of pilots already, which means we've started actually asking real people about this stuff. And we've spoken to people in Sweden, Greece, and Netherlands, so quite different. And if you look at those 3 countries, you might have in your mind an idea of which you're going to be pro and anti. I won't do a show of hands, but I thought, yeah, Sweden, they'll be up for it. Greece, they'll hate it. And Netherlands, they'll be somewhere in the middle. Right? Anyone about that? Probably, yeah. Completely the other way around. So the Swedes were thinking, well, what about people who can't use it? How does it work for old people or kids and et cetera, et cetera? The Greeks, absolutely up for it, because they now love the EU, because the EU sort of shelled out a load of money and bailed them out and everything else. And the Dutch are like, oh, hold on a minute, you know, government overreach going on here. What's this all about? So some of the quotes from some of the users we've spoken to already, several hundred so far, and we're targeting piloting with probably over 10,000 users, by the way, with real wallets. Best thing ever. I don't know who this was. They've probably been down the pub or something. But it's a really good point here. Much better than a plastic card. The final part of digitization after cards, bank cards, gift cards, and membership cards. Right. So someone is on the ball with that. In Sweden, right? They've got bank ID in Sweden that they use all the time for everything, and penetration is huge. So that kind of works. So why use anything else? So what are the Swedes going to do? They're going to need a different set of messages to the Greeks, for example. Here we go, some other bits here. The ability to use it all over Europe. Someone's latched onto the fact it'd be a bit like the COVID vaccine pass, which it'll be a bit like that, but not quite. Everyone's got the same currency, so why not have the same way of doing digital ID? Some other quotes. EU issuing this is credible, right? It's not the EU issuing it, or the EU's done the legislation. The EU is ensuring conformity across the member states. Each member state will be issuing a digital ID. And if you think about it, it's pretty obvious, really, isn't it? Every time a government the government here or wherever gives you a physical credential, they should say, do you want a digital one with that? Okay? Why doesn't that happen? Why doesn't it happen? And I think we as an industry need to look at ourselves and go, that should be happening. What have we done wrong? It's going to happen in Bhutan. Look what Bhutan have done. So every time a physical credential gets issued, any government should say, do you want a digital one, and have a way to do it. The mayonnaise bit we'll come on to at the moment, but they're saying, well, it won't be commercialised by the EU, etc. So there's quite a lot of trust in the EU, and there is going to be a trust mark that goes with this, right? That everyone will instantly recognise, hopefully, that they can use their phone to verify their ID, either in person or remotely. Some of the negative stuff, right? People are worried about tracking and correlation, and this is before the privacy advocates that are very vocal in Europe get onto this, okay? With the UK being out of the EU now, we don't have to worry about it, but can you imagine the outcry amongst a certain section of the press with all of us having to get a government-mandated ID on our phones, especially without the right protections against correlation in place. So there's negatives as well, and we'll find out more about this as we go through the process. Meanwhile, in the US, in Mountain View at the Internet Identity Workshop, an Apple wallet and a Google wallet demonstrating their jointly developed digital credential API that allows an Apple wallet to protect with to present with selective disclosure details from a credential. It's an MDL-based credential held in an Apple wallet, and a Google wallet being able to do exactly the same thing. Okay, so who'd have thought that would happen, right? What a surprise. So the big OS vendors, Apple and Google, are getting into digital credentials now, and they've got a credential API. And can anyone imagine how long it would take for that credential API to merge with their payments API? So combined identity credentials and payments coming your way soon. What does this mean? Well, it means that unless the eIDAS wallet, well, there is that, unless the eIDAS wallet is better than this experience, then this is going to win. Okay. Meantime, I present you this slide of joy and happiness. Here we have an amendment to the European driving license regulation. Did you know there was such a thing? Okay. You can see why my life is so much fun. This regulation is to allow European governments to issue digital driving licenses, mobile driving licenses. Okay. And in the text buried away is there's three variations. There's one from the European Commission, one from the European Parliament, and one from the European Council. This is how they just draft stuff, right? So these applications, the applications are the wallets into which these credentials will be issued, will be based on the European Digital Identity Wallet, be based on the European, or shall be issued to. Right, based on is pretty grey to me. I would argue based on is if the European Digital Identity Wallet is MDL, Mobile Driving License Spec, and my Apple wallet or Google wallet is MDL, then my country should be able to issue my driving license into my Apple or Google wallet. And with that mobile driving license, I can do age verification, I can do address verification, I can do basic ID with a face, and I can do all that other stuff. Okay, so why would I use an eIDAS wallet if I can do this? So this language is in draft mode at the moment. There's still quite a lot of work to do. I've been giving a bit of feedback that maybe it isn't tight enough and should probably look a bit like this. So you've got to keep an eye on these other bits of legislation that are taking place as well, because, as I say, we might be ending up in a situation where eIDAS wallets, unless they're amazingly brilliant, are used just for a single or a small number of high assurance government credentials, and your iOS wallet is used for pretty much everything else, so 80% of everything else you do. I've got naught left, and this is the last slide. What next? So firstly, advice to anyone watching online or here, if you want to know what to do, keep an eye on what these large-scale pilots are doing. Understand what the regulation means, which might mean reading it or getting someone who has read it to tell you. And look out for business model information coming, because that's going to be crucial. You could form your own large-scale pilot coalition and get planning. And that is it. Thank you very much.